Oh my goodness.
What's happening?
There's a fire.
Do we have three things? Three things we need to say?
That's exactly it.
Oh my god, I'm a fucking magician.
You're a mind-reading person.
I'm a wizard guesser.
You're a witch man. Okay.
What are they?
Okay, well, number one, Happy Passover.
Oh, Hag Sameach.
Hag Sameach, yeah. From your two magicians.
What did I say before? Hebrew Hustlers.
The Hebrew Hustlers.
And the Kabbalah Ballers.
Exactly, the discourse in my Jews. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We're here for you. So, for all my magic Jews out there.
And non-magic Jews. And just magic people.
That's right.
Happy Passover.
Happy Passover to you. That's number one.
If you're a non-Jew who doesn't do magic, you can go fuck yourself on this Passover.
You know what?
Okay,
okay, whatever.
Fuck them, I don't care.
Yeah, okay. And somebody you're like eating something. You're clearly eating. You're like, fuck them. Oh, fuck them. Okay, fuck them. Even if they're listening, fuck them. I'm eating a sandwich. I don't give a shit.
That was the whole point.
Fuck them. Okay.
I literally put food in my mouth just for the bit, but now I'm struggling to swallow it fast enough to get through this.
Okay, so while you chew and swallow, I'll tell them about number two. So number two is this really awesome course that we're launching. It's called Fantastic Gigs and Where to Find Them. So it's basically a free online 5-day course starting May 1st, all about where to find new gigs and how to book them. So if you are trying to penetrate a new market, Tyler, don't laugh. If you are trying to book your first few gigs, maybe you've booked some, but you want to book more, or you just want to get a little bit better at the business side of magic, sign up. It'll be plastered everywhere on the Discourse in Magic website before May 1st, or you can go to discourseinmagic.com/fantasticgigs, and we'd love to have you. It's going to be great. We're all going to be doing it together from May 1st to May 5th, so we want you to be a part of it. Come join us. It's going to be fun, and it's totally and completely free. Tyler, have you swallowed and you ready to talk about number three?
Yeah, I have. What's number? The episode.
Yeah.
The reason why they're here.
Yep.
The reason why they clicked
Yep.
the link. Episode 54 with Brian Keith Miller of Brian Miller Magic.
Yeah.
Great episode coming up right after I stop moving my mouth flaps. And yeah, what do we say about this guy? He does so much. He's a motivational speaker, a magician, a vlogger, a musician. He's all over the place, but what he definitely is business savvy. So
he told us all about like networking for magicians. So everything that takes, whether that means, finding the people that book you, or the way I like to say it, finding the people that find the people that book you, like, a manager or something like that. And he basically tells you how to network, which is so important for magicians, and how to, get yourself out there. I know that's a big key buzzword for you guys, but really, he gives us some tips on how to do that. So no more mouth flaps for us. Time for episode 54. That's a full deck with the jokers.
One joker and a dupe.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah.
My name is Tyler.
And I want to welcome you to what we're going to informally call Season 2 of Discourse in Magic, which is, I guess, post 52.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not, I was going to say BC 52. Whatever, anyway. So we're here with someone who I've been trying to interview for a long time, and I'm very excited that we are coming together, especially in Motivation Month. So I sort of don't even know how to introduce this guy because he does so many things, but I'll just say he's a magician, he's a speaker, he's a musician, he's a vlogger, but he's doing a whole bunch of very fantastic stuff, and it's Brian Miller. How are you, Brian?
Hey, very well. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
We're very, very excited to have you, and as I understand it, you follow the podcast a little bit.
I do, yeah. I've been listening to it pretty much since you guys started. I was mostly intrigued originally just by the title. So kudos to you guys, because there's plenty. There's actually like more magic podcasts out there than anybody would believe.
Yeah.
And my wife couldn't really believe it. I was like, yeah, there's actually a lot of them. She's like, you mean the magic podcast, right? No, there's a bunch. And so many of them focus on tricks, and you guys were focused on the theory and the business, and that's what I care about. So,
Well,
amazing.
Well, yeah, thanks so much, obviously, for that. And you know, that I think that's probably the first time that anyone ever said anything about liking the name. So
Yeah.
you know, props to that.
We spent a long time on
We'll,
it and then grew to hate it.
we'll
But
take
now
it.
I might love it. So
We'll
there
take
we
it.
go.
We'll take it. So I guess just to start, as usual, how did you get into magic?
So I'll do my best not to tell the same story as everybody else. I started when I was 4 or 5. It's a very similar story. You know, I started when I was, a kid. My dad, my grandfather, they were magic enthusiasts. They absolutely unabashedly loved magic. And when I was a kid, my dad used to take me every year to see Copperfield. Copperfield on tour used to come. I grew up in Buffalo, and you guys are my, Buffalo, we're kind of a Canadian colony, so you guys understand.
Yeah, pretty close.
So we're like
It's
right
the only
there.
place in America I've been. So
Exactly. That's a little upsetting, but hope you
is
had
upsetting,
wings while you were there. So in Buffalo, there's actually a really big, beautiful performing arts center that gets like the A-list Broadway tours, and Copperfield would come by every year. During the years where he was doing, every year was one of what we now think of as his most famous illusions. So I saw him do flying on the original tour. I saw him do the laser illusion, cutting himself in half, walking through the fan. We actually had the seats next to the grate in the audience, literally next to, so inches from me is where he appeared in the audience after he walked through the giant fan. So I saw, it was wild. I saw Copperfield every year, and this is what my best memory of magic, in terms of getting into it, was my grandparents lived in Long Island, and every year for Thanksgiving we would go to Long Island. And I don't know if you guys remember, like our age gap between me and you guys is maybe only 5 or 6 years, but that lately 5 or 6 years is a big difference because of technology.
Yeah.
So anyway, we used to watch the NBC would put on The World's Greatest Magicians, I think was the name of it.
Yeah, I know about it.
Yeah, you guys have probably seen the clips on YouTube.
Exactly.
I grew up actually watching it every Thanksgiving. My grandfather and I would huddle in front of what used to be a huge TV, now is like smaller than a tablet, right? That was the living room TV. And we would huddle in front of it and watch it, and then he would help me learn a magic trick or two, and then after dinner I would show the trick that he had helped me learn to like my whole family, my cousins and everybody. And we did that every year. So I have really, that's where magic started for me, was just something that my dad and grandfather loved and showed me. Yeah.
It's crazy how a passion for magic coming from, parents and grandparents and uncles, and, it's such a trope, and even if, it's funny, like, I mean, for me, people say, like, they're like, was your uncle a magician? The one who got you into magic? And I'm like, no, but he did magic tricks. I don't know. I don't know. What do you mean?
I tell
He
people,
found out he had a nephew and decided to learn
And
one,
my uncle as well
and that
took
was
me to
it.
David Copperfield, and they were like, wait, but was he a magician? And I was like, no, he was a businessman, but he made me do magic. I don't know.
Yeah, my dad is a world famous computer scientist, and my grandfather, and that's true. And my grandfather is a retired dentist who used hypnosis in dentistry when it was first legalized for use in medicine. So not magicians, but my dad, every time my friends were over, he was doing magic tricks for us. Take your parent to school day, he would come in and do a magic show for the class. But everybody kind of panicked many years later when I actually said I'm going to do this for a living.
You know what?
I'm pretty sure every magician
I know the
feels
feeling.
that.
Yeah, I do. I know the feeling. So I sort of thought we would dive in by starting talking about one of the things that I was most excited to talk about, which is, I guess selfishly, but I just started about 5 years worth of going on tour in the summers. So I go to different camps, and I know that you sort of do tour life. And for me, you know, I don't want this to sound horrible, but it takes 6 months to plan my 1 month tour, right? It takes 6 months to go to whatever it is, a little bit over a dozen camps all over like Ontario, maybe a little further, Quebec, New York, whatever. It takes like about a half a year to get all that done. So it's bonkers to me that you're going on multiple tours, and it obviously says that you either are waking up every day and calling 500 people, or you've got a great system, or you've got great motor or something, right? So how do you do it? How do you put together a tour? How do you get that thing together without it taking up your whole life doing it?
So there's two answers to that. The first answer is it does take up my whole life doing it.
Cool.
My whole life, right? So
perfect. Just like that.
The first answer is that the last couple of years I've done almost 300 live events. And when I say live events, a lot of them are stage shows, some of them are strolling, some of them are instructional, some of them are speeches, right? I do a lot of different things. But so I did perform at or speak at almost 300 live events last year in each of the last few years. It's most of my waking life. And so part of that answer is it's just constant, but that's
right. With a number right, but with a number like 300, of course, you know, of course, I mean, it takes at least 300 emails, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, it doesn't. Well, so it's interesting. So it doesn't take 300 emails. So the other answer is the way I'm able to do that now that I was not able to do it when I was. I don't want to say at your age, because age isn't what it's about. It's about experience level. Right. It doesn't matter if you're 50 or 10. You know, if you're just getting into it, it's the same. You know, it takes time to build. I hate when people talk about age like that matters. It's all about years of experience, not age. So the answer is I have 8 agents right now that I work with exclusively in a handful of markets, and then I have a bunch of other agents I work with non-exclusively in a variety of other markets, on top of which I do my own marketing on Google and my own mailings and my own website and email and cold calls. I don't do much cold calling anymore. We can talk about that at some point. But I have a huge system of people that work with me, not for me, but work with me. I have like one person that works for me part-time when I need him, kind of a thing. But yeah, I just have a huge system of people, which always, I remember when I was in a position where you guys might be right now, where I would look at people who are now doing what I'm doing and go, how in the world am I ever going to get there?
Well, and so the thing is, and I don't mean to interject, but the thing is like, you know, people, the most common question that I get from people asking about where I am, you know, that are similar to where, I mean, not to say that I'm anywhere fantastic for my age, but it's great that I can say I've got 5 years of touring under my belt.
Yeah,
you know, at 22, right? So when people ask me, they're like, the words they always say is they're like, I need an agent. And to me, I'm like, well, every gig I've ever gotten so far has been with no agent. And I fully understand that every time I speak to someone who's like, you know, really, you know, pouring in a lot of gigs, they have 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 agents. Yeah. But I can't think of any way for somebody in their starting years, you know, to be getting an agent, to be wanting to push gigs to them.
Yeah, so the way that it happens is like everything else, it builds slowly and it builds over time, and it builds with experience and reviews and testimonials, and you know, there are just no shortcuts, and even like lately, occasionally you'll see something, you know, like I don't like to throw names out, but I'm going to throw them out in a positive light, so hopefully that's okay. Matt Franco, who I knew for years, we were friendly, you know, friends, not hanging out every day or anything, but we were friendly for years before he exploded. To most magicians, it looked like he came literally out of nowhere and just all of a sudden won America's Got Talent, and now he's in Vegas. And that dude put in years of touring the college circuit and doing private events and doing corporate and working with agents and then being self-represented after he learned from agents. And, years. Likewise, recently, Steve Brundage, a brilliant magician that I've known for years. Nice guy who put in years on the streets busking and doing private events in a very in an area of New York where there are just not that many people, and he really put in the time. And then between the talent and the time and a little bit of luck, and there's always a little bit of luck, all of a sudden it looks like he just came out of nowhere.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Most of us don't get the Matt Franco or the Steve Brundage experience of having one thing that just explodes us all of a sudden. And like I've never had that. I have my TEDx talk that has done a lot for me, but that, even that, it's not like that one thing just took me from nothing to where I am now.
Yeah, and everyone says, no one, even the people that do have a big thing, they always say like there was no one thing. There's a bunch of things that sort of made an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know, you guys, the people listening can't see, but you guys can see that on my wall in my studio behind me there is a picture of Jim Carrey as the Riddler.
I was about to comment on it earlier.
That's an original that I eBayed some years ago. There was an old joke in the industry that used to be Jim Carrey was always the one that was used for it. It took Jim Carrey 10 years to become an overnight success.
Right.
So how do I end up with the truth is, though, how do I end up with so many agents? I got signed to a national entertainment agency about 7 years ago. So I don't know if you guys want to talk about that, if you're interested in kind of how that happened, or, I'm real loose on what you guys want to talk about here.
Well, I'm interested in how it happened, but only so much to know what the path is for somebody. If that was the path that they were to go, I mean, let the nitty gritty fall when it happens, right? And sort of, if you can, what the pros and cons are of trying to go that way, and if that's sort of a thing that you try to do, or if you just go hard, do it as much as you can, and cross your fingers that someone reaches out to you.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, as a general rule, the least amount of business work I have to do, the least amount of emails, phone calls, marketing, Google AdWords, website, all that stuff. The least amount of that I have to do, the more time I have to focus on my show.
Right.
And fundamentally, why did I get into this? I didn't get into this because I wanted to be a businessman or a cold caller or a marketer or an emailer. I got into this because I wanted to be a magician. But you find out really quickly that being a professional magician has very little to do with doing magic. And that sounds really upsetting but at some point you guys have probably discovered it already. It all of a sudden, when you, like you said, it took you 6 months to set up that 1 month tour.
Right.
It's a tremendous amount of work to be given the privilege of doing magic for money. So all of a sudden, when you get bogged down in all that other stuff, you find that you're not learning new tricks as much anymore. You're not working on your show as much. You're learning more about marketing. You're learning more about emails. You're learning more, and your focus kind of shifts. And all of a sudden, you wake up and you go, "Well, I'm running a business, but I'm not doing magic a lot anymore." and so for me, I am like, I hear some entertainers occasionally complaining about the percentage that an agent takes. Industry standards 20%, and if you're new, they might take more. If you've been in it for a while and you're really doing well for them, they might take less. But to me, my God, if they have the thousands of contacts already, and the emails and the phone numbers and the relationships, take your 20%, please.
For
take
sure.
it and just tell me where to be and when. My agency, I get probably about a quarter of the work that I do all year from my exclusive agency. So it's not the majority of it, but I get a lot of it from them. And when they book me somewhere, I just get an email that says, this date at this time at this location, and here's what you're getting paid. That email just shows up and I go, great. And then I book the travel. And that's it. I mean, that is so much easier than the hundreds of hours of calls and emails and conversations and marketing that it takes to get a couple of gigs.
So how does someone get that?
What's the step to not be doing cold calling?
Getting an agent is about networking. It's not, I say this a lot because of the speaking that I do is all about making connections with people. That's what my TED Talk's about and everything. It's not who you know, which is what you hear people say all the time. It's not who you know, but it is who you meet. And that's really important. You need to meet people that, work for these agencies. So you do have to do some things for free, which none of us like to do. Nobody wants to do free work. And you've probably heard, hey, if you're good at something, don't do it for free. Free work only leads to free work. Well, it depends on what the free work is. If a client, somebody calls me and goes, we're having this big, huge fundraising show and we're obviously paying for the catering and the venue and the this and the that, but would you come do it for free? It's like, well, no, of course not. Unless it's unless it's a charity that I really personally care about, in which case, of course. But in that case, I probably reached out to them by myself. But doing free events like networking events where the purpose is for you to gain, contacts, that's a really good idea. So.
Okay. So what type of event, what constitutes a networking event for you? Do you go to business conferences? Do you go to entertainment company business conferences and talk to people? Where is the platform to do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it all depends on what market you're in and what region and where you live. But I mean, if you're, if you're doing college entertainment, you have to do NACA. You guys have interviewed some of the college guys before. You've heard about NACA. NACA is both a godsend and a nightmare all at the same time, and I'm sure you've heard that. I spent half my life in NACA, so I owe a lot of my success to it. But it's a difficult world. But if you're just working locally, you're not trying to go out there on tour nationwide yet. There are so many free local networking events for businesses. When I first moved to Connecticut and I had no contacts in this area, for the first year, that's all I did. I signed up for every chamber of commerce and I went to every donuts and coffee networking event. And they always have those events at 7 a.m. because it's for business people before they go into work. So for us as entertainers, the instinct is there's no way I'm getting up to go to an event at 7 a.m. It's way too early. We work at night. You got to do it. You got to get up and get yourself in there and shake people's hands and show them a trick and hand out business cards. And I used to get, a gig here, a gig there. And then after a while, a gig here and a gig there leads to, this person that saw you at that gig actually knows somebody who is part of an agency that might be interested. And suddenly you have a contact. I mean, there's no way to say this event today, I'm going to meet someone that's going to get me to an agent. But if you just go to them all the time, I mean, it's not that big a world. It's really a small world. You will meet people.
Yeah, and lo and behold, you call up a friend of yours who is oohing and eyeing, a business savvy friend of yours who's oohing and eyeing at what you're doing, and tell them, hey, you get 20% if you can call me and get me booked in this city, in this month, in this thing. If you can get it done, you get 20% of each one. This is what I charge. I mean, I have a couple friends that are savvy enough to make a phone call and make a good sale, and hey, if it's the end of the world for you, for me, I don't hate the email back and forth, but I am trying to systematize it better to take up less of my time.
Right.
But I mean, there's always ways to find somebody to help do it for you, but there's obviously a cost.
Yeah. I mean, there's a cost to that. And also, anytime you have somebody else kind of working on your behalf, you've got somebody else speaking on your behalf, which means anything they say is a reflection of you, your work, and your business. And that's your other, kind of pros and cons. There's your other downside to having somebody else do it for you. That's why if you're going to do it, you really want to get in with one agency. And if you can get in with one, you want to develop a really good relationship with them so that when they're pitching you and talking about you and promoting you, that they're doing it in such a way that reflects what you care about about your work and your business, and and also, you can't get an agent when you're just starting. Agents only want to work with you if they see that you're already working. It's that classic catch-22 situation with, introductory everything. If you're just trying to get your first job out of college and everybody wants
you need 5 years experience.
5 years of experience, right? So you do need to be doing like what you're doing. 5 years you've done the like a month-long tour. That is something that you can really package up nicely. You could call up 8 different entertainment agencies within 30 miles or an hour of you probably, and call them all up and go, listen, here's the work I've done. Here's what, I've got to show for it. Here's the reviews. Here's the testimonials. I'd like to be doing more work and I'd like to expand my range. Do you think that we can work together? And you've already got a package there because you've been doing, and you can show them that you're willing to do the work and you're working. And that's what they want to see. And then they might throw you one gig, right? They're not going to all of a sudden fill your calendar.
But that's great.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you get that one gig, you're good. They're going to ask the client how it was. And if you do well at that one gig, you'll be booked for more gigs.
Exactly. How do you get gigs?
And then it's all about
everyone.
I was going to say, and then it's all about that second poster behind you, which is be so good they can't ignore you.
Yes, it's my Steve Martin poster behind me.
Great quote. And there's also a book right now that I'm in the middle of reading by Cal Newport with the same title.
Okay. I haven't read that.
Very interesting book.
Cool.
Very cool. I thought that was very helpful. One of my favorite things about having a podcast is I get personalized advice from people. They just tell me, here's what you should do. I go, perfect. This is great. I love it. So because this month is motivation month, I want to try to be as practical as I can for somebody at home who's listening to this and they're like, I want to get 1 more gig, 2 more gigs, 5 more gigs, 10 more gigs, like whatever that thing is, like what action can they be doing? And I don't want to beat the punchline because if yours is different, but I just want to say, what action can they be doing every day, right? Or every week or once a week or whatever to help really push this needle?
Yeah. All right. So that's a great question. You just want to get, you want to talk about kind of before I had agents or just kind of like general stuff? Because a lot of my work still comes not from agents.
I guess like how does somebody, if your work now is different than what it was before you had agents, then I for now will start with what's before.
Yeah.
But if it really is the same, then just what is that day to day like?
Okay, so let's start with the before, and then most of that is still what I do now to get stuff outside of my agents. It's just I just do it on a lot more on a much higher level, and I have a lot more money to invest in it now than I did because I started doing magic professionally at 16. I founded my business legally. I've had a legal business since I was 16 years old. And when I started then. And this was like before, there was no WordPress, YouTube didn't exist yet. This is where that 5-year age difference makes a huge difference. Yeah. MapQuest didn't exist yet. I was still using maps to get to things. Yeah. So what I did, I know it's crazy, right? So what I did then is I actually, because I grew up in a family with computers. My parents are both computer scientists. And so I understood computers in an age where nobody my age really knew how to use a computer besides just basic word processing. So I got a website, like GeoCities or something, way at the beginning of this stuff. And I had a basic website. It was horrendous. But at the time, that having a horrendous website was better than having no website. That was amazing to people. And I got my first run of business cards. I designed them on on probably Microsoft Word or Paint or something stupid, and then I had them printed by some company, whatever. So I had business cards with my name and the word magician on it and my phone number and an email address, and I got my domain name Brian Miller Magic all the way back then. Probably the smartest thing I ever did by
Sounds
accident.
Almost exactly like my story, like how early like I got all those things and how early so funny.
Yeah, and it was, I didn't realize then how important it would be that I've had that domain and my web hosting for that long, because I get ranked so high because my SEO, before SEO was a term, I've had search engine optimization going on for so long, and it ranks you really high if you have stuff longer. So basically, I had a website, and I had business cards that would point people to my website. And then the first thing I did, first magic gigs I got were restaurants. And to this day, I tell my students, and I have one or two kind of early 20s magicians that are kind of getting their start, that kind of work under me a little bit, and I refer some gigs to them now. I tell everybody, website, business cards, those two things are a must. If you're trying to make, I cannot believe how many magicians I talk to that claim they're trying to make it and don't have a website. I'm like, guys, it's never been easier or cheaper to have a beautiful website. This is crazy. And I think you guys talked about this at one point or wrote a blog
We've
post
spoken about it a million times. It's outlandish. And my favorite activity in the entire world is to, see a magician who's trying to make it and not have a website, or worse, see a magician who's trying to make it and have a website that looks like your first website, the one that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Now, when you can get these like crisp, picture perfect, mobile friendly, optimized, flip flap, whatever,
for
everything
free.
you want.
Free. I mean,
it's like $100. It's a price that it's a price that it's a price that getting a website earns you to charge the least for your gig.
Seriously.
I know that's a silly metric to say, but it's like, you know what? You can get a whole website, everything for $100. Fine. Now when people go to your website, you're now worth $100 at least. At least. There you go.
It is, and it's like less than what you get paid for 1 2-hour night at a restaurant. So just take that money, get a website, and get your own freaking domain name. I'm like, that whole BrianMillerMagic.wix.com. Come on, guys.
Slay me if it's WordPress.Jonah. It's over. Absolutely.
So obviously,
Weebly, get out of here.
Yeah. So website, business cards, but then the daily mindset is this, every single day you need to be handing out your business cards and talking to somebody about the fact that you do magic for private events. And it's the hardest thing, I think, when you're first getting started because you don't have confidence in yourself yet. We parade around when we're first getting started as if we have confidence, but it's nothing but a mask for insecurity. And we just we really, because I remember being like, oh yeah, and I think that's why a lot of magicians, side note, when they're first getting started, develop an arrogant personality as a magician. It's nothing but a mask because we're so nervous and so paranoid that people aren't going to like us that we just put on this overconfidence, mask, and that tends to fade away over time. When you actually do develop confidence, you don't need to be arrogant anymore. Mm-hmm. So I think what you need to do when you're first getting started is get comfortable talking about what you do to anybody. Just you meet somebody, or you're at a coffee shop, or you're whatever, and you don't just introduce yourself. Hi, I do magic for money, and hand them your business card, right? You didn't have some finesse, but you can work it into almost any conversation. It's fascinating and people, if you just kind of slide in the fact that you're a magician to a conversation, people are so fascinated by that. They've never met a magician before. They'll do the rest of the work for you. They'll ask you all the questions, and then most people will ask you if you have a website or a YouTube, and that's when you just pull out a business card and you go, ta-da, right? And you just hand it... Please don't say ta-da. And
and there goes the gig. Okay.
And don't make it magically appear. Don't get cute. Just hand them your business card and say, yeah, you can check out my website. I do some private events, whatever. You don't have to make a hard sell. It's a soft sell, right? It's just here's what I do. It's kind of interesting. And hey, if you're ever having a company holiday party or something like that, if I'm talking to somebody and I just want to toss out the fact that I'm a magician, it's what you call a soft sell. I just kind of mentioned a couple of types of events that I've worked recently. I don't go, hey, if you're having an upcoming party, because that's a hard sell. Instead, you can go, yeah, recently I just did this great holiday party recently for a company, and you tell them a little story about something that happened at a recent event you did. That triggers an idea in their mind about types of events that they might have that you might be good for without you actually trying to sell it. So
one of the craziest things is since I've gone full time without doing, and I guess I've been doing a lot, but without reaching out, a lot of random people who are friends of friends have reached out to me. And what it tells me is that, like, being the go-to magician, the more people that you're the go-to magician for, you know, the more likely it is that you're going to get those gigs, right? So now more often I'm in the periphery of my friends' minds, you know? So now when anything related to anything that my friends are a part of mentions needing a magician, if they can bypass Google, you know, if somebody in the room goes, oh, I know the guy, right? I got the perfect guy for you. Exactly. Like, if I can get that to happen, then it sort of helps do my job for me, right?
You know, and what you just said is so true. The power, we all know the power of word of mouth, but we don't really appreciate it until you realize that I have been booked by events that totally could have afforded Steve Cohen, right? That could have afforded probably bringing in David Blaine. But the reason they brought me in is because someone in the room went, oh, you know, I was at a family party a couple of years ago, and I saw this great magician. He would be really good. I think I still have his business card somewhere. And boom, they could have afforded the top, most expensive, highest profile guys, but I got the gig because someone in the room vouched for me. And more than any Google review or YouTube video or anything you've ever seen online, when a real person says, I've seen him work and he's great, there's nothing that anybody else, Steve Cohen could never compete with that, right? And I couldn't compete with someone saying that about him. But it doesn't matter what echelon you work in or how technically good you are or how much you charge. If someone in the room says, I've seen him work, you're much, much, much more likely to want to work with them. No different than we act with doctors. That's why we ask people, or auto mechanics. You don't, right. you look at a review for an auto mechanic and it's got 500 5-star reviews. All it takes is one person to say to you, yeah, but this other guy, I've been working with him for years and he's the best.
And he does the same job and it's $10 cheaper and you go, okay, I'm in.
He's got no reviews on Google, but it doesn't matter because your friend said he's the best.
He does the best job ever. Yep. I've never had a problem. And you say, great.
Yeah.
I'm doing it. So while word of mouth is like number one, there is something to be said about sort of buckling down on a specific niche and finding a way to reach out to those people. And I will tell I think a very interesting story about a mixture of those two things. Is one of the areas I perform at camps in the summer, but specifically I go to a lot of Jewish camps. And I was unaware, but there's a board of Jewish camps that meets regularly. And I was informed that I was brought up as a topic at the meeting to mention how great it was and that all the other camps should have it and that I got other things. So the reason I brought that up is to say, like, even more powerful than word of mouth is instead of your random friend Bob saying, oh wow, Jonah's good, whatever, but it's the person who says, I hired him for exactly the same thing that you're talking about right now and he over-delivered, right? And that, I think, like, is even better, you know, like that's the kind of thing that, you know, it's not someone just saying, I know a magician, I know a guy, but it's someone saying like, I know the guy. So how do you get that? How do you find sort of an area? Because I know that you're working in a couple of very specific areas. How do you find an area and sort of reach out to people there? I mean, for me, it's as crazy as, where can I find all of their contact information and then reach out to all of them and see if they want magic? But
so a lot of it is just legwork, like you said. You do have to, you know, compile your own email list, which is easier than it's ever been. It's time consuming, but it's easier than it's ever been. To do that and, you know, toss them all in some email system, you know, and hit send on, you know, one email that goes out to everybody on that list. And there's lots of laws about, you know, that stuff. Yeah. So, you know, make sure you read up on that before you do it. Opt-outs have to be in there and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But I guess, are you asking more about the mindset about it? Because, like, the physically doing it is like, you just got to do it. You just got to email, you got to Google and, you know, whatever. But,
But yeah, so let's dive into the mindset. I mean, first I sort of wanted to know. I mean, the reason I ask about the actual physical grit of it all is because I almost selfishly want people to hear you say the words, yes, I call them and I email them, because there's people at home that are on the other side of the fence being like, really? Like, am I, like, is that what it takes? So, and obviously that does bleed into the mindset, which is what we're about to get to. But yeah, like, I mean, really, I just want, yeah.
Oh yeah, you just want to hear me say, oh yeah, of course. I have, I mean, 100, if you want to book one gig, you got to call 100 people. So at some point when you're dealing in terms of cold calling and emailing, and if you're trying to get booked in a certain market and you don't already exist in that market, or you don't already have a really big reputation in that market, that's just a number. It's just a numbers game.
It's numbers, right?
And it sounds cold, and that's why it's called cold calling. It's just, and cold emailing. It is cold. You call 100 people, you get the phone hung up, you get hung up on 99 times, but one person goes, you know what? That does sound like something we might be interested. Would you send me some more information? And then you send them a prepackaged email that's short and sweet and to the point, that has a link to your website, to the exact page with the exact information that they need. And I think that's what's missed sometimes, is sometimes you just go, here's my website. But it's like, wait a second. If you're targeting, like if you guys went to my website right now, and if you would see a lot of general stuff because the homepage is designed for general stuff. But I almost never link people to my homepage, because by the time I'm talking to somebody, you mentioned Jewish. I work at a lot of Jewish camps, and I do a lot of bar mitzvahs in the tri-state area of Connecticut, New York, outside Manhattan. And I have an entire page on my website that is just for mitzvahs, just for bar and bat mitzvahs. And if I'm talking to somebody about their bar mitzvah, I'm not going to send them to my homepage where it says corporate and high-end private events and speaking engagements and youth motivational speaking. I'm going to send them to a page where they open it up and it says bar mitzvah magician. That's the first thing on that page. And the second thing is, 2 testimonials from recent parents of bar mitzvahs, and then a bunch of photos from me working bar mitzvahs, and then a paragraph about how I work at bar mitzvahs, and then
it's so funny. It's so funny because mine is my website is exactly the same. There's one page for everything that I send people to, and the buzzword that I want to put out there is the word landing page, right? Because that's page. What it is you're saying, like, here's all of the resources for you.
I was gonna say, it's kind of like trying to sell somebody something, and then once they're willing to listen to the product, telling them to Google it. Right? It's like, go do your own research about me. No. You know what I mean? Like, you have to make it exactly, you have to be exact and clear with everything they need to know in one step.
Yeah, right? And if you want people to do something for you, you have to make it as easy as possible for them to do that thing. And I feel like sometimes I don't know what happens. Like we get so, excited that one person was interested that we think, that's it, I'm done, they're going to book me. And then we just go, here, look at all my things.
Yeah.
And it's like, no. Give them the exact information they're looking for.
Yeah. It's like you've got them for the next step, you know what I mean? Like, you've bought yourself, if it was a phone call, you bought yourself 10 more seconds. If it was an email, you bought yourself 1 more email, you know what I mean? Like,
That's awesome. And I mean, it's so great to hear someone say exactly my mentality, which is, making landing pages for exactly what they want to see, with reviews, testimonials, videos. Like, I think it's obvious. I always laugh at magician websites. There's so many pet peeves I have of magician websites, but one of my favorite ones is magicians who are starting out, and I don't even think this makes sense for magicians that are pros, but gallery pages. I always think it's so funny that when they have no landing pages, but a gallery page. It just makes me laugh, because you're trying to target an audience of sorts. Someone's going to get on your website. They won't know what to look. But they're going to go through a gallery of you posing at different monuments, holding playing cards. It's just so strange to me why you wouldn't make a page. And we've had a couple different episodes of people that touch on websites. And one of the things that came up, is the idea of it being for your buyer, right? Like, it's not a shrine to yourself where people can go look at how much you love you.
Yeah.
It's a shrine to, how you can
for you, right?
Get them exactly what they want.
Yeah, and that's, and I'm sure you guys have heard it before, but I'll say it again in case anybody's tuning in like for the first time and hasn't heard something like this said before. If you're designing your website or if you're making a sales pitch, stop talking in I and start talking in you. Anytime you're about to say, well, I've done all these things, I work like this, instead, phrase it in a way that puts it on them. They're the so you say, so you're having an event where you're looking to entertain your group for this type of thing. Here's how I'm going to solve that problem for you. But you start it with you. Replace I with you on your website, in your when you're talking to clients or prospective clients. You get a lot more business a lot quicker by doing that.
Absolutely. I think it's and it should help remind you that the better you can serve, and I love this. This is a quote from, I'm going to butcher it, but it's a quote from a guy named Pat Flynn, and it's that income is the metric to measure how well you serve your audience, right? So, and I love that, because I think about, it's not, magic isn't for us to just go out there and be like, look at me, la-di-da, like, the better that we can really grasp what it is that our audience want. And I think, it's lucky of us if we can find an audience that all wants the same thing that we're excited to deliver upon, because then we get to say to them, this I can do, like, I know that sounds funny, but the mindset of saying, like, for example, I have the confidence to know that I can hold a room of 20 to 100 people's attention with a pack of cards and a table for an hour and a half. Because of what I do with my tour, right? So Now, in the grand scheme of the universe, does it matter that I can hold a room of people's attention with a pack of cards for an hour and a half on the table? No. But for my confidence, for my pitching, for my sales, for my everything, it does me wonders to know that I'm delivering one thing that I am 100% sure that they are going to enjoy. I know how they are going to enjoy it. I know why they are going to enjoy it. I know everything about what it's going to deliver upon, and it's because I sort of found that mesh between the thing that they really want and the thing that I can do.
Yeah, you're kind of conjuring up a Venn diagram of what they want, what you do, and finding that little sliver where they match up. And I think one of the things too that would help a lot of guys who are just getting into it is really quickly learning when to say no, learning when to turn down gigs. Because I think I'm not a kids magician. I've never been a kids magician. I've never done a proper kids birthday magic show in my life. And I do a lot of family-friendly events. What I realized over the course of my career is I'm very good if you give me an audience that has a mix of kids, teens, adults, and grandparents. If you give me everyone from the young to the old, that's my wheelhouse. But if you lock me in a room with 28-year-olds, there's no way. It's not for me. And I think kids magic first gets for some reason, like, magicians who don't do kids magic seem to hate on it. I think kids magic is so much more difficult than most of the events that I work. Yeah. It's incredibly difficult and getting harder, I think, these days. But the point is that I'm not a kids magician. And so it's really tempting when someone calls me and I have the day off. They call me for a day that's totally free. It's during one of my down times of the year. And in my area where I live in the country, you can get a lot of money for a kid's show. Like, when I grew up in Buffalo, $175 was like maximum for a kid's show. In Connecticut, like $325, $350, $400 for a kid's show, no problem. So to turn down $350 or $400 to do a 45-minute kid's show on a day that I have off, when you don't have much money, that's a hard thing to do, is to say no to that.
It's very hard, yeah.
It is. And what happens is, because of that, I think when we're first starting and we need the money, we take gigs that we're not good at, and that doesn't help your career. If you want to play a long game, if you want to build a career and not just make some money right now, you need to only take the gigs that are in your wheelhouse. Think about where you want to be 5 years from now and start only doing those gigs now. I think you'll be better off. And you will lose a little bit in the short term, but it's for a long-term gain. It's for developing your career. And I learned that, somebody taught me that early on. And the first year I implemented it, I was barely making enough money to survive at the time. And then I started turning down offers on days I had off, which is brutal when you can barely afford to pay your rent. But by doing that, after 2 years of doing that, suddenly I don't get those calls anymore. I only get calls for the stuff I want to do that I'm good at. And that's how I started to find my market and started to be the guy in my market instead of a guy in any market. And I think
I obviously think that it's great advice to stick to your niche. And I mean, people have heard me say it a lot on this podcast, but I will make a caveat, which is to say that you need to be actively working on getting gigs in your own niche for you to be turning down gigs in other niches, because sure. It's one thing for you to spend all your days sitting on the couch watching Netflix to have one of them interrupted by you going, no, I'm not a kid's magician, but it's another thing if you're, reaching out to your proper clients and saying to yourself, no, I know the type of magic that I should be doing and this really is not going to serve my career any better, and you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, clearly, if you're not doing any work at all, first, if you're not doing any work at all, you're not working hard enough because there's just so many gigs. I know that sounds harsh, but this is motivation month. So when people tell me, I can only get like 1 gig a month. And I just think to myself, you're not trying very hard. There's so many gig opportunities. There's just so many events all the time. And if, now deciding that you're not a kids magician, that's a tough one in particular because there's like more kids parties than there are like anything else.
The money's in the kids.
Over.
The money's in the kids.
Yeah, they're in terms of quantity, right? You're doing kids market is playing a quantity game. You're saying there's so many kids shows out there. I could just say yes to all of them. I could be, I could be doing 20, 25 kids shows a month, whereas I can make the same amount of those 20 kids shows in one good corporate event, right? Mm-hmm. So you're playing a quantity game there, and it all depends on But you shouldn't be making that decision based on money. You should be deciding what type of magic you want to do first. These are the kind of things we could go on for just hours about that stuff. But yeah, I if you're not working at all. And you shouldn't be then you should not be turning down gigs, obviously. But also, if you're not working at all, you're just not working hard enough. You're not looking. So
where does, and I know this is sort of, going back a step, but let's say someone just heard that and they said, you know what? You're right. I'm not looking. So what would you tell that person to do? Where do they go look? What rocks do they turn to go look for gigs?
Get a restaurant. Get a restaurant gig. Get 3, get 5. Get restaurant gigs. Restaurant magic remains to this day the very, very best way to get gigs when you're first starting, or even if you're not just first starting, anytime, to just maintain a reputation and build a group of people who know about you and can talk about you and refer you off. And restaurant gigs they're not hard to land. They're just a numbers game like everything else. You got to call 100 restaurants to book one. And, I'm sure you guys probably have done an episode at some point about how to book a restaurant.
We've spoken about it at length.
Okay, so you've spoken at length. Go listen to one of those episodes for the advice on how to actually get one. But the beautiful thing about restaurants is you get paid to advertise for yourself. So instead of paying to advertise, they pay you, you do some magic, you work on your chops, you work on some new tricks, and you hand out a business card at every table. Where else?
I love it. I love the way you're saying it. You're like, guys,
it's your practice
they're
time.
paying
It's
you
a
to
paid
advertise,
gig.
guys.
You're booking more gigs. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of money that you could spend in a month on Google AdWords, they're going to pay you that same amount of money, and you're going to hand out just as many business cards. So, restaurants are great.
People who are reacting to your magic already.
Yeah, to people who already like what you do, and you will get calls for 2 months from now, 6 months from now, sometimes years from now. I've had people call me and say, I saw you a couple years ago at, and they'll name a restaurant, and I'll think a couple years ago. I worked at that restaurant 8 years ago, and when I'll get to the event, they'll show me the business card that they still have for me, and I'll look at it, and I'm so embarrassed because of how crappy and old that business card is. I can't believe that they still have that, And so if I worked at one point 4 restaurants a week when I was first getting started, and if you work 4 restaurants a week, and you get to 20 tables an hour, and you hand out 1 business card at every table, that's 40 business cards a night, 4 times a week, 160 groups of people who got your business card that week. It's crazy to not be doing that. It's
crazy. Like that, like comparing that to even like cold calling and cold emailing, like those are fantastic numbers.
Yeah, and those are warm leads.
Yeah, exactly.
Because those are people that have seen you, that are going to recommend you, that might have... And when you're chatting with those people, I talked about this earlier, so I'll just mention it again. If you're doing a trick, instead of going, so if you guys ever have a party or a this or a that, don't sell it like that. You can say, in the middle of doing a trick, you can go, I was just working this holiday party recently, and while I was there, this thing happened. You tell them a quick story about some event you worked recently, and that just puts the idea in their mind of the types of events they could hire you for. It's a great technique. So I wanted to say it again. It's a really good technique.
No, it's awesome, and it's less pitchy, right? So you don't necessarily have to be that like salesy
It's
guy.
less desperate.
Yeah,
right? It's more like, this is just what I do, and by the way, here's my business card in case you ever want me to do it for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess one of the last things I wanted to talk about was, and I guess this is a little bit for me personally, but for anybody who's starting to do on the road, you're spending a lot of time touring. I know you're about to head on to a very big tour. Where are you going?
I can say that I'm going to Asia. I actually can't say anything more than that right now. This is, I'm doing another tour for the troops. Anybody who follows my work sees that I go for the American troops that are stationed on Navy bases all over the world. I do shows for them from time to time. And so I'm doing a big 3-week tour of Asia, but we're actually not allowed to say where we're going until the tour is over. So...
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool anyway. That's especially cool is what I meant. But
it's already mysterious and then, because it's magic, right? And then it's like, it's a secret magic tour.
Secret magic tour, yeah.
So my question is about, handling life on the road. So for me, there's a lot of quiet days, a lot of quiet time, there's a lot of traveling time, so... obviously we both listen to podcasts a lot. I don't listen to my own, but
I just sit around watching my own vlogs all day.
But I do see that you started sort of producing vlogs on your tours as, both a way to help capture what you're doing and I guess sort of, something else for your mind's eye on the road.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my question is how do you you spend like 300 days a year at shows, which means, I'm confident that you spend more time traveling than you do performing, right?
Absolutely.
Like it has to be. So you must have strategies, to work with that and strategies to... So that's sort of my question. Is there anything that you save specifically for your travel time? Is there something nice you do? Is it sort of is that just the hardest part of your job that you still have to get over every time or?
So easily the most difficult part of the job when you're doing this kind of work, which is travel, it is the travel itself. It's, so for example, in the college market, again, you guys have talked to some college guys, but an example for a typical day for me on the college tour is I might have just done a show last night in North Dakota. And so I get done with the show at, 10 o'clock, 10:30, 11 o'clock. Most college shows are late shows. So I get back to the hotel at midnight. I then have to repack all my bags carefully because it's got all my magic stuff in it that it can't just be thrown around. Then I have to be up at 3 or 3:30 in the morning, about 3.5 hours later, to get the rental car back to the airport. The airport's usually 2 hours from the college because colleges are not typically right near an airport. So I get back to the airport, put the rental car back, check in for a flight about 5:30 in the morning, board a flight at 6:30 or 7, first of 2 flights for the day. Get in after the second flight, land, find a rental car, drive for about 2 hours to wherever that college is, get to the hotel, shower quick, go over to the show, 2-hour load in, set up, sound check, do an hour on stage, meet and greet after the show, do it all over again, wake up the next morning and fly to LA, and then fly the next day to New Jersey, and then the next day to Florida. So, and a show every night. So if you guys follow, the guys...
When do you have time to jump off a bridge?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't. So I don't.
That's the only thing stopping me is I have another show to do.
So if you guys follow, some of the college guys, Michael Kent and Dan Martin, Peter Bois, these guys who are, friends, and I'm happy nowadays to say colleagues of mine, guys that I admired and watched when I was coming up in Magic. You'll see we all have these days where you see some weary photo on Instagram of us just looking dead in the eyes. That's because that's what the schedule looks like. So where do you find time to do anything? Mostly on the planes. If you have to do work, you can do it on the planes. Although a lot of times I need that time to sleep because you don't sleep much. So it's the answer is, how do you find time? You just kind of do it. You just put your head down and you do work when you have to. You go as hard as you can, and then you need to specifically take time off for not.
That was my question, because I was sort of wondering if there was any chance where travel time, I mean, especially driving, but, the travel time was something that you got some zen out of or some enjoyment out of. Because I know there's a lot of people that enjoy it as, solidarity time, or I know there's a lot of people that enjoy it as the only time that they can, read books and check emails without getting dinged by other things, or when they're up in the air, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if it was for you, still something grueling, or if it was maybe something positive or zenful, or you found a way to milk the positivity out of it.
The travel is the most for me personally. The travel is the most difficult part. I love doing the shows. I love being in new places. I love meeting new people. But if we can just invent the beaming technology to just show up, I would just, because the truth is, like you asked me earlier, you must spend most of your time traveling and not doing shows. Well, you think about what I just said. Most of my days are 15 hours of travel and a 1-hour show. Right. So, yeah, it is really grueling. It's hard being away from home. It's hard being away from my wife. That kind of stuff.
It's like every big name magician's Facebook or any social media feed is another flight, missed my family, haven't seen them in months,
delayed again. Yeah, it's all.
Yeah,
it's all
lost my bags, have to go to the dollar store. God damn it!
Yeah, it's all, and that's part of that's why the travel is so hard, is because travel's not fun like it used to be. Airlines are not enjoyable unless you're flying, first class, which most of us, no matter how big we get, are not able to afford to do. It's one of those, I could technically afford to book myself on first class flights, but then my profit margin would be so low it would be stupid. So, we all mostly just fly coach or Comfort Plus, which is the new airline way of milking an extra $60 after you already paid a ridiculous price for an economy seat to get 3 more inches of leg room, and I'll buy it on almost every flight.
The glorious legroom.
Yeah, so I don't want to sound like a downer, but yeah, it's the most difficult part, but it's also a necessary part to do what I love all over the world. I mean, last year I performed in 7 countries across 4 continents, and if you could go back, and if I could tell my 16-year-old self, hey man, someday you're going to have performed in 1 year across 7 countries on 4 continents just because you're a magician, I would have, my jaw would have hit the floor and I wouldn't have believed myself. You know what I mean? So
very, very recently, I've been thinking about the notion that how long in my life magic was not cool. For how many years magic was not cool. And then all of a sudden, all of a sudden, I don't know what happened. The switch turned, the current started coming through.
And it's not just like
cool.
your own perspective of yourself, it's other people's perspective of you,
I don't know what happened.
Like, I remember specifically my brother and my cousin would always be like, yo, you are wasting so much money on magic tricks. Like, invest in a car. Like, what are you doing? Stop. You're going to regret this in 10 years. And now they're like, yo, why aren't you performing more? Get out there. Do more stuff. Like, it's the complete flip.
And it just, everything goes in waves. And we had the late 90s had a big wave where David Blaine and then Chris Angel kind of came up and did, and magic was cool again. And in the early 90s, it wasn't cool anymore. In the 80s, it was really cool. But then the 90s, it wasn't. And then late 90s, it was cool. And then the 2000s, most of my teenage years and where it was not cool. And then it just... the
way you said that was so definitive.
Yeah, it's just like most of when I...
For me, it was not cool.
It wasn't. I mean, it wasn't cool to be a magician. And then it just came back around like 5 or 6 years ago. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, first there was The Illusionist and The Prestige, and they kind of kicked it off. The two movies 1 year. And it was, people were like, oh, magic could be cool and not cheesy again, which is, the fact that magic is cheesy these days is totally our fault, right? That's 100%. We, and I think a lot of my generation of magicians, and then the one below me, which is, you guys are kind of half below me, and then the next generation, I think my generation of magicians started to be like, we need to make magic cool again and not cheesy anymore. I think that kind of started with the magicians who are now 30 to 35, about 5 or 8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, started to really actively be like, we need to make this cool again. And I'm not taking personal credit for it, just I think there was a general, consensus among, we all kind of stopped doing it.
And the Wayne Houchins.
Yes, exactly. And the Dan Sperry's and guys like that. Yeah. So, whether you like them or don't like their performance style, they were like, we need to make this cool again. And so the movies helped. And then Now You See Me, as silly as it was as a movie, it made magic very cool. I
love everyone asks me what I think about that movie. I'm like, as a film, it was terrible.
Exactly.
What it did for me socially, I love it.
Yeah. Everyone who asks me that's the same thing I tell them. I say, I'm a movie buff. In another life, I was a film critic. So I'm like, as a movie, it was horrible. The plot holes, the character development, it was terrible. Yeah. But it treated magic with respect for the first time in a long time in pop culture.
And you know what? I'm giddy every time magic is in pop culture. That's like, people ask me like, what did you think of? And then no matter what magic pop culture thing they say, I go, fantastic. And they go, really? And I go, no, I hated it, but it was fantastic that it existed.
Right.
So
yeah.
So
and then we have a lot to thank. We have Michael Carbonaro to thank a lot for magic being cool right now. I think we obviously Penn and Teller with Fool Us.
Absolutely.
And then all of a sudden, it was Matt Franco's year that AGT finally decided they didn't hate magicians anymore, and they just flipped, and now they love magicians. And
they love us.
It's been a couple seasons. I think it's going to come back around, but magic became really cool again. And a couple years ago, when Franco won America's Got Talent, I remember thinking, man, if I hear any magicians this year complaining that they didn't book enough holiday parties, then they just weren't working hard enough. Because magician just won AGT. Your pitch to every single holiday party this year should be, you need a magician at your party because it's all any of your people are talking about.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Well, that's awesome, and I think there was some awesome advice in there. And now we're sort of wrapping up. So there's two different things that we do when we're wrapping up. So the first is we go around and we mention something from the episode that we took that was particularly valuable. And I really liked a lot of it, but I especially liked when you just basically said that you just basically yelled at the people telling them to do it. Because I think, as silly as it is, I think for myself, and this is one of the only times so far that I've sort of picked a favorite part of the episode that wasn't for me, but was for others. But, just saying, if you're not getting at least some gigs, if you're not doing at least some paid magic right now, you can be, because, and like Tyler and I are always saying, if you're in the depths enough of the internet to be listening to the 1 hour mark of a magic podcast, you're good enough at magic to book a gig. Like, it's just so impossible that you would have found your way here without being good enough to book yourself at least a gig. So I really enjoyed you saying that. Tyler, what was your favorite part?
I really liked the soft sell approach. I think that's super valuable because a lot of the time people ask me what I do, and I do get very self-involved, and it's more, I feel like speaking about magic more casually, A, makes you sound like more of a professional, and B, puts the interest on their side. Like, they have to want you at that point. You're not trying to convince them of anything. So I think it's really cool to use tactics like that to sort of just speak about yourself as a human being with the identity of a magician. You know what I mean? So that's the idea that they build with you. And I want to, get some new business cards made because the ones I have right now are no good. But I would really like the idea of handing out as many business cards as possible. It's not something that you actually mentioned, but you said, at a restaurant you can hand out to every table you go to. So if you spend every day talking to 5 new people, no matter where you are, at a coffee shop or anything, and just leaving a business card with them, you're going to get something out of it, and it costs you next to nothing. Like Vistaprint is what, $15 for 1,000 business cards or something like that. So
business cards are so cheap they may as well be free. Yeah. And it's actually because you mentioned 5 people every day. I'll just say this. I say this. This is part of my keynote speeches, but this is true. You meet an average of 3 new people every day of your life, on average. So over the course of a lifetime, you meet an average of 3 new people every day. And so if you think about that as a magician and you want to market, you think, I'm going to meet probably 3 new people today. You should be talking about magic or the fact that you do it or handing out your card to all 3 of those people most of the time. So
I think that's fantastic. And was there a part of the episode, either a bit of advice, whether it was one that came from you or something that came from conversation, that you think is particularly important for the people at home?
I'm inclined to say pretty much what you talked about already, Jonah. I think the hardest thing for me when I was first starting was falling into the erroneous mindset that I'm not booking enough gigs because I don't have enough money, I don't have an agent, I don't have a this, I don't have a that, I don't have a good enough website, I don't have... falling into that and just sitting around watching Netflix, which of course didn't exist when I was doing this, but watching.
You guys had to rewind your VHS.
We did. We had to rewind our VHS.
Poor
we did.
You.
That was a real thing we had to do, and Blockbuster charged you extra if you didn't rewind it before returning it.
But remember,
to them.
no more late fees. And then right after that, it was no more Blockbuster.
But the truth is, I think it's the mindset of just doing it and doing it every day and talking to not just 3 new people, because you're going to meet 3 new people every day anyway. You call or email or talk to 100 people every day. Get out there and do it. You have to. I mean, that's it. It's work. Nothing. There really is no shortcut, and nobody is just going to discover you because your website and suddenly an agent is not going to call you and offer to put you on their roster. By the way, that's just never going to happen. So you have to be out there doing it. Yeah.
Well, that's at least good. So even if someone disagrees with everything that we've said and they're like, my game is only to get an agent, then even still, you have to be out there doing it because agents live out there and not in your basement. Whatever.
And they already work. They have a full roster already, and they don't need you. You got to remember that they don't need you. So if you want them, you got to go to them. So
that's a good point. Every agent already has a full roster.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, fantastic episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah. Very exciting interview. Glad to have you on, and love it.
Any last words of wisdom? Anything you want to shout out to the magic community? Any projects you have going on? Places people can find you? Yeah, I mean, I just did start vlogging a few months ago. I think it's pretty cool. My channel is still very, very small, getting very few hits and but growing very rapidly already. So I think that if you guys want to check out my vlog on YouTube, you can just search Brian Miller Magic. I think it's youtube.com/Brian Miller Magic. It really ought to be if it's not. I think
I think that's what it is. Yeah, if you guys want to follow the vlog, I think you'll enjoy it because I've designed it to not be about the tricks, but to be about everything that we're kind of talking about. It's designed to show you specifically a behind-the-scenes look of a successful but non-famous entertainer on the road. That's what the vlog is. So,
well, I'll tell you from personal experience, I've watched a couple of them. I think they're awesome, and I think that it's really cool that you are documenting some of the things that you're doing. You know, I was talking to Tyler about this the other day, but I was saying, like, you know, I'm managing all these shows, I'm producing a podcast, I'm performing multiple times a week. I'm like, I should be vlogging. Like, I'm doing some cool stuff that the world might enjoy watching me do, as if I'm not busy enough, but
exactly.
Like,
yeah, that was my hang up when I first was gonna 2 years ago. My agent started telling me you should be vlogging, and I was like, no, you know, it's whatever. No, absolutely not. And they just kept insisting, and I was at a point where I was like, guys, you know my schedule. I'm doing almost 300 live events a year. I'm traveling to all of them. I'm doing the calls. I'm doing the shows. I'm planning them all. You want me filming everything, editing and uploading 3, 4, 5 times a week as well? And they were like, yes.
And okay, cool, perfect.
And it took me until about last October to finally start doing it, and it's a tremendous amount of work. But I found that I really enjoy it. It's a great creative outlet for me, and it's kind of cool for me to occasionally actually do look back on them. And sometimes when you're in the middle of doing stuff, you don't actually get to enjoy it because you're so busy. It's like it's hard to enjoy a magic show sometimes when you're in the middle of performing it because you're focused on maneuvering with the audience and distracting and all the things you're supposed to do. And then sometimes you only enjoy it in retrospect. For me, it's kind of cool to be able to look back and go, oh, look, you know, someday when I have a kid, I can go, hey, look at these cool things that I did once, you know. So
absolutely.
It's kind of cool.
And it's also like there's something to be said about exactly what you're saying, where like, you know, instead of vlogging just being, you know, this like fun piece of SEO or this way to get followers or whatever, it is also this like post-artistic outlet to be appreciative of these awesome things that we're doing. And like I just said, you know, literally the reason why I want to vlog is because I'm doing so many cool things in my week that like people should see it. I don't know. Like, it's not for SEO or anything. It's literally so that I can just share because it's just so cool that I get to
you
do
should.
these things. So, yeah.
You should.
Anyways, thank you so much. And of course, big thank you to everyone at home. And once again, a reminder that look how good you did. A little bit over an hour of talking about no methods. So there you go. There's proof that you can do it. You are a champion. And big thank you again to Brian. Some great nuggets of info here. And speak soon.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye. Your Honor, I'd like to call witness Tyler Williams to the stand.
I don't know what a judge says in this situation, but Tyler Williams come to the stand. I'm Tyler Williams at the stand. Here I am, everybody. Look at me. I'm standing at the stand.
Okay, sit down. Sit down at the stand. Put your hand on the Bible and say, I stand to stand.
The whole truth, so nothing but the truthful stuff.
Amazing. Okay, now, did you or did you not learn about getting yourself booked? Objection, leading the witness. Sustained. Go ahead.
I did.
Okay, good. What specifically did you learn from Brian Miller?
I learned that you constantly need to be making people aware of who you are and what you do, and that a great avenue to do that is restaurants.
Your Honor, let the record show that he learned something. Duly noted.
From Brian Keith Miller.
My last question, and take this how you may. Does the contents of this interview make you think of anything happening at Discourse in Magic in specific? Objection, leading the witness. Sustained.
Alright, well, first off, I'm the judge. I don't know if I'm doing the same voice as I did before, but I'm I'm the judge, so you can stop with your sustained bullshit in my court.
Sorry.
Anyway, yeah, it does make me think of something that's coming up. We have an awesome course that we're launching May 1st. Fantastic gigs and where to find them.
That's right.
And,
it's Discourse. We have Discourse in Magic.
we have
And
Discourse at discourseandmagic.com.
That's right.
/ fantastic gigs and where to find them.
that's exactly what it is.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. It's not. It's wrong.
Discourse at Discourse.
Nope.
Listen. We have Discourse available at
nice.
now. You get it?
Yes.
You get it?
Yep.
Discourseandmagic.com / fantastic gigs.
Exactly. And that's where you're going to learn how to penetrate a new market, Tyler, don't laugh. That's where you're going to learn how to, start getting gigs if you haven't yet, or if you just want to spice up your gigging, then giggity goo.
Bye.
Yeah, bye. I think that's it. I think that's all we have to tell them.
All right.
He's guilty.
Still eating, by the way.
He's guilty, sentenced to veganism for life.